Hello, this is Yogeshwar 7000 again, and I'm back with my video on Karakas. And so far, we have discussed Chara Karakas and Sthira Karakas. Chara are movable Karakas, and Karakas, as we know, are significators in a birth chart. And we have discussed fixed significators, which is Sthira Karakas. And of course, just to give you a quick recap, the Chara Karakas are based on the Gemini principles. It's presided by the god Vishnu because it talks about and it represents planets, which is about sustenance. It's all these planets and their activities and significations rather related to these planets are about sustenance. So there are 8 planets because the 9th planet Ketu is excluded. It does not represent sustenance, it represents moksha. So we don't take the 9th planet into consideration when we discuss Charakarakas or movable significations or significators in a birth chart. And there are rules based on Gemini principles. The highest or the planet which holds the highest degree is the Atma Karaka. The second highest degree is the Amatya Karaka, and significations are represented based on those Charakarakas, which is the highest degree planet or the planet holding the highest degree, through the planet which holds the lowest degree, which is the Dharakaraka, and there are rules and significations related to those planets. And please refer to that earlier video if you want to go into detail with that. Then we discussed in another video about Sthira Karakas, which are fixed significators, and those fixed significators are 7 in number because they are physical bodies, and the Chaya Grahas or the shadow planets Rahu and Ketu are excluded from that because they are physical bodies, and they are presided over by the deity or the god Shiva. And the significations related to the Sthira Karakas are also discussed in the earlier video. Please refer to that. Mostly it is related to when you do analysis and predictions related to death, because Shiva is about destruction. He's a god of destruction. But even otherwise, even other than matters related to death, those Sthira Karakas or fixed Karakas are discussed, and those significations are discussed, and based on the planetary significations related to those 7 individual planets. We have done a discussion that on our video on Sthira Karakas, so I'll recommend please go and refer to that video on Sthira Karakas or fixed significators. And today we'll be talking about Naisargika Karakas. That's a third category of Karakas or significators rather. And Naisargika Karakas is presided by the Lord Brahma, and Brahma is about creation. So we take into consideration all the 9 planets. So like in Sthira Karakas, we take into consideration the 7 planets because it's about physical bodies, and we exclude the shadow planets or Rahu and Ketu. And Chara Karakas or movable Karakas, we exclude Ketu because it's about sustenance and presided by the Lord of Sustenance, which is Lord Vishnu, and we exclude Ketu because it's a Moksha Karaka. It's not about sustenance, it's about moksha or final liberation. And Naisargika Karaka is presided by Lord Brahma, which is about creation. So we take all 9 planets into consideration, and the rules for Naisargika Karakas are different. So we have to remember that we have to take into consideration the Chara Karakas while analyzing a chart. We have to take into consideration the Sthira Karakas while analyzing a chart, and we also have to take into consideration the Naisargika Karakas while analyzing a birth chart. And all these 3 have to be taken into consideration before coming to a conclusion from the point of view of Karakas. And of course there are other methods to analyze a chart where you look at the Rashi, you look at the placement of planets, look at the degrees, look at the conjunctions, look at the aspects, look at the Ashtak Varga, and look at the yogas. Go into all those details definitely, but from the point of view of Karakas, all these 3 Karakas have to be taken into consideration, which is once again the the Sthira Karakas, which is the fixed significators, the Chara Karakas, which is the movable significators, and the Naisargika Karakas, which is the third category of Karakas. And today we'll be talking in detail about Naisargika Karakas. So Naisargika Karakas, just like the Karakas or the fixed Karakas or the Sthira Karakas are, to give you a quick recap, Sun or Venus, whichever is stronger, depicts father. Moon or Mars, whichever is stronger, depicts mother. Mars depicts or signifies younger siblings. Depiction may not be the best word. Significator is a better word. So Sun or Venus, whichever is stronger, signifies father. Moon or Mars, whichever is stronger, signifies mother. Mars signifies younger siblings and brother-in-law, which is the sister's husband. Mercury significators maternal relatives, which is uncles and aunts. Jupiter signifies husband for a woman, sons for both man and a woman, paternal grandparents. Venus signifies wife in a man's chart, father-in-law in a man's chart, mother-in-law in a man's chart, again father-in-law and mother-in-law also in a woman's chart, and maternal grandparents. And Saturn as a Sthira Karaka represents elder siblings. So these are the matters related to the Sthira Karakas. So these have to be remembered by people who are analyzing their own charts, their friend's chart, or even astrologers who are doing astrological readings. Please remember the movable significators, which are the Chara Karakas. Please remember the fixed significators, which are the Sthira Karakas, and also the signification specifically related to those Sthira Karakas. And going to the Naisargika Karakas, which we'll be discussing today, the planet Sun signifies the first house, and not all matters to the first house, but specific matters related to the first house, which is the self, which is the physical constitution, which is the soul, and which is the health. And Jupiter is the Naisargika significator of the second house and matters related to family and wealth, so not related to speech, as we know that second house represents speech also. So please remember the Naisargika Karakas or the Naisargika significators is talking about specific houses and matters specifically related to those houses, not all matters which are represented through houses as per Vedic astrology. The third house is signified, or the significator of the third house is Mars, or Mars is the significator of the third house, in other words, in matters specific to your courage and younger siblings. The moon is a significator of the fourth house in matters related to mother, not other matters. And of course, these are the primary Naisargika Karakas, and then we'll be discussing about the secondary Naisargika Karakas, where other matters will also be discussed. But in specific terms, the primary matters discussed by the Naisargika Karakas are these which I just went through, and please do some more research on that and then try to analyze these. Like I said, take into consideration the Chara Karakas, take into consideration the Sthira Karakas, and also take into consideration the Naisargika Karakas, both primary and secondary, which we'll be discussing, related to specific houses and related to matters concerning those specific houses. Mars is a Naisargika Karaka for the sixth house. Primary matter signified is enemies. So that is what you have to take into consideration. Venus is a Naisargik significator for the seventh house and matters related to seventh house only in terms of a wife in the case of a husband's chart and husband in the case of a wife's chart, and all kinds of relationships in both a man's and a woman's chart. Similarly, Saturn is a Naisargika significator or Naisargika Karaka for the 8th house for longevity and all kinds of major troubles he has and obstructions he has in his life. And we are talking about primary Naisargika Karakas right now. The 9th house or Jupiter is a Naisargika Karaka for the 9th house in matters related to your guru, your religion, and your general luck and fortune matters. The 10th house significator is Mercury, or in other words, Mercury is the significator of the 10th house, not a fixed significator, not a movable significator, or not a sthira significator, or not a chara significator, but a Naisargika significator of the 10th house, and only matters related to honors and achievements and his karma in specific terms. Jupiter is the significator of the 11th house as well, along with the 2nd house and the 5th house, which we discussed. Naisargika significator of the 11th house, just like we discussed, it is a Naisargika significator of the 2nd house related to certain matters. It is a Naisargika significator of the 5th house related to children, and also a Naisargika significator of the 11th house, which is related to elder siblings only. So Jupiter is not a Naisargika primary significator of other matters related to the 11th house, and other matters could be desires, could be incomes, could be other matters which are related or signified by the 11th house. But in case of Naisargika significations, Jupiter is a Naisargika significator of the 11th house in matter specifically related to elder siblings. So Jupiter in the birth chart, whether it's well placed or not, is going to give you an idea of about your elder siblings, not about your income. It'll give you an idea about your children because it's a Naisargika significator of the 5th house related to children. It will give you an idea about your family and wealth, which is because it's a significator of the or a Naisargika significator of the 2nd house related in specific terms to family and wealth. So please make a note of this, that Naisargika Karakas are Karakas related to specific houses for specific matters signified by that particular house. Now Saturn is a significator of the 12th house, or a Naisargika significator of the 12th house in matters related to losses. So these are the primary Naisargika Karakas we discussed, and primary matters or primary matters signified by these houses in relationship to these Naisargika Karakas, which are represented through these planets which we just discussed. We just discussed 7 planets so far, and now we'll be discussing about the planets which we just discussed again in terms of their Naisargika significations for other matters as well. So Sun, going back to Sun again, it is a Naisargika significator of the self, the soul, the constitution and health, which we just discussed, related to the 1st house. But at the same time, it is also a Naisargika significator of the 5th house as well. So that is a secondary thing which we are discussing. Primary, we just discussed the primary houses signified by the Naisargika significators, and primary matter signified in relationship with those houses, in relationship with these Naisargika significators which we just discussed. Now we'll be talking about additional matters signified by these Naisargika Karakas. So once again, going to Sun, it signifies the 1st house in matters related to the self, the soul, the constitution and health. It also is a Naisargika significator of the fifth house in only matters concerning fame and power, not for children, as we know that fifth house represents children as well, but in terms of sun as a Naisargika significator of the fifth house, it is only concerned with these two significations of fame and power. So see how sun is placed in the birth chart, and then come to a conclusion about the first house in terms of self, soul, constitution, and health, and also fame and power represented through the fifth house, and then also the boss and the father represented through the ninth house. So very important that this is how you have to kind of come to a conclusion. Also, sun can also be a Naisargika significator of the 10th house. As we know that Mercury is a Naisargika significator of the 10th house, sun can also be a Naisargika significator of the 10th house, related in specific terms to his career and achievements. Similarly, when we go to moon, moon is the Naisargika significator of the first house, which is represented by mind, not the body. Please remember, this table has to be remembered by you, or should be as a ready reference for you, because for some people it may not be easy to remember it by heart. Once you start practicing on several hundreds and hundreds of charts, then these Naisargika significations and understanding and how you represent and interpret these Naisargika significators along with the sthir significators or the sthir karakas and the chara karakas will come in very easy to you. But then until then, keep it as a ready reckoner, this little table which will explain you what the sthir karakas are, what the chara karakas are, and what the Naisargika karakas are in relation to specific houses and specific matters signified by those houses. So like I just said, moon is a Naisargika Karaka or a significator for the first house in matters relating to the mind only. Moon is a Naisargika significator or the Karaka for the mother and peace of mind related to the fourth house. And moon is a Naisargika significator or Karaka of the 11th house for friends. So see a distinction here, that Jupiter is a Naisargika Karaka of the 11th house related to not friends, it is related to elder siblings. So Jupiter is a Naisargika Karaka for the 11th house related or specifically which are signified by elder siblings. And here we see that moon is a Naisargika Karaka of the 11th house which is related to friends, not with incomes, okay, not with elder siblings. So we have to remember once again that what planet we are discussing, for which it is a Naisargika Karaka for what specific house and what specific matters. So look at the placement of moon, just to give you an example how you interpret it. Look at the placement of moon, how moon is placed in the person's chart. So the person's friends can be signified through the 11th house from the point of view of the position of moon in terms of the 11th house related to friends only. Okay, now Mars is a natural or is a Naisargika significator for younger siblings related to the 3rd house, real estate related to the 4th house, enemies and diseases and accidents and loans related to the 6th house. So see how Mars is in a particular person's chart if you want to analyze it, and you will get an idea of the significations related to the 6th house related to enemies, diseases, accidents, and loans. So it pretty much covers everything. Sometimes planets do cover all the significations which are related to that house, and sometimes they do not cover all the significations. Like for example, we just discussed moon as is a Naisargika Karaka for only friends as far as its Naisargika signification related to the 11th house is concerned, not all the matters. But here we see Mars is a significator or a Naisargika significator of the 6th house, which covers everything: enemies, diseases, accidents, and loans. Mercury is a Naisargika significator or a Naisargika Karaka for the 2nd house related to speech only, not to wealth, because as we know that 2nd house represents wealth also. But when we talk of Mercury, it only is a Naisargika Karaka for the 2nd house related to a specific matter related to the 2nd house, which is speech. Memory. So Mercury is also a Naisargika Karaka for the 5th house is related to memory only, not to pleasures, because 5th house represents pleasures also, not to children. So if Mercury is well placed in a birth chart, it is not a Naisargika Karaka of the 5th house related to children. So children are not to be analyzed in person's birth chart based on Mercury as a Naisargika Karaka. That's the matter which is related to Jupiter. So the area which is given to Mercury as a Naisargika Karaka is related to the 5th house, which is concerned with the memory only. Okay. Mercury is also a significator of honors and achievements because it's a significator or a Naisargika significator of the 10th house as well. Jupiter is a significator or a Naisargika significator or a Naisargika Karaka of the 2nd house, as we know, related to family and wealth. So here they see the distinction. When we talked about Mercury, Mercury is also a Naisargika significator of the 2nd house, but it's only only concerned with speech or the matters signified by the 2nd house when it comes to Mercury as a Naisargika Karaka or the Naisargika significator of speech. But here in the case of Jupiter, when we consider Jupiter as a Naisargika Karaka of the 2nd house, we take into consideration the matters signified, which are family and wealth. Then Jupiter, as we've just discussed, is also about the significations is a Naisargika Karaka or the significator of the 5th house related to children. So there's a difference here again. Mercury is a Naisargika Karaka of the 5th house related to memory, whereas Jupiter is a Naisargika Karaka of the 5th house related to children. Jupiter is also a Naisargika Karaka in matters related to his guru, religion, and fortune. So that's related to the 9th house in specific terms, in matters specified by or matters specified for the guru, for his religion and his fortune and luck in general. So that's the Jupiter's signification of the 9th house in these matters only: guru, religion, and luck. And also Jupiter signifies the elder brother, and for some astrologers they also consider gains as well in matters related to the 11th house. So Jupiter is a Naisargika Karaka for the 11th house related to elder brothers and gains. So there may be slight contradictions based on different ancient scriptures of Vedic astrology, but more or less they converge to a meeting point where there is a general consensus on which houses and what matters are covered by these 9 planets as far as Naisargika significations or Naisargika Karakas are concerned. So once again, it's difficult to remember that. The more you practice the difference between Charakarakas, Thirikarakas, Naisargika Karakas, the houses signified by the Naisargika Karakas and the matters signified related to these houses as far as Naisargika Karakas is concerned, is something you'll have to remember or keep it as a ready reckoner when you do readings of your chart, your friend's chart, or your client's charts in case of astrologers. Similarly, Venus is a Naisargika Karaka for the 4th house related to vehicles only, not related to mother, because we know that mother is also signified by the 4th house. But no, Venus is a Naisargika Karaka for the 4th house, but only matters related to vehicles. Venus is also a Naisargika Karaka of the 7th house in terms of matters related to spouse. So in a wife's chart, you will look at how Venus is placed and determine as to what the situation is as far as her husband is concerned. And in case of a husband's chart, you will look at Venus and how Venus is placed in the chart and come to a conclusion about matters related to the 7th house in as far as matters related to his wife is concerned. So Venus is a Naisargika Karaka for a spouse, or Venus is a, let's put it this way, Venus is a Naisargika Karaka of the 7th house related to the spouse and marital bliss, but not other matters, because as we know that 7th house can also cover business partnerships. So Venus does not have authority over that area. Venus is only concerned about being a Naisargika Karaka of the 7th house related to marital bliss and wife in case of a husband's chart, and husband in case of a wife's chart. Venus is also a Naisargika Karaka for bed pleasures for the 12th house. So in other words, Venus is a significator or a Naisargika significator of the 12th house in matters specified to bed pleasures only. It is not, as we know that 12th house also signifies moksha, expenditure, losses. No, but Venus is not a Naisargika Karaka of the 12th house related to losses, expenditures and moksha. It is only a Naisargika Karaka for the 12th house in matters related to bed pleasures only. Saturn similarly is, or Saturn is a Naisargika Karaka for the 6th, 8th and 12th house in matters related to servants as far as 6th house is concerned, longevity and all kinds of obstructions and problems as far as 8th house is concerned, and losses and hospitalization as far as 12th house is concerned. And 12th house, as you know, is about moksha also. So Saturn is not concerned about moksha as far as its Naisargika signification is concerned. It's only concerned about hospitalization as far as its 12th house signification or Naisargika signification is concerned. So that's the area it covers. So coming to the 8th planet, Rahu. Rahu is a Naisargika significator of the 6th house related to accidents. So once again, Rahu is not concerned about enemies, diseases, loans of the 6th house. It is only concerned with accidents in specific terms. So Rahu is a Naisargika significator of accidents, or Rahu is a Naisargika significator of the 6th house related in specific terms to matters signified by accidents. Rahu is also a Naisargika significator of the 8th house related to occult knowledge. And Rahu is also a Naisargika significator of the 9th house for long distance travel, especially going overseas, because Rahu is about breaking barriers and going overseas. Similarly, Ketu is a Naisargika significator of occult knowledge, or Naisargika significator of the 8th house related in specific terms to occult knowledge. And 8th house could be other matters as well, you know, happiness from marriage, inheritances. No. So Rahu and Ketu are only concerned about occult knowledge. So Rahu and Ketu both are Naisargika significators of the 8th house related to occult knowledge only, not to other matters related to the 8th house, which could be dowries, could be inheritances, could be happiness or troubles from marriages, or even chronic diseases, so they're not concerned about that. They're in specific terms Naisargika Karaka of the 8th house related to occult knowledge. Similarly, Ketu is also a Naisargika significator of the 9th house for long distance travel, especially going overseas, because Ketu is about breaking barriers as well. And very, very important, Ketu is a Naisargika Karaka of the 12th house related to moksha. So it's not concerned about hospitalization, it's not concerned about expenditure and losses, it's not concerned about secret enemies, which the 12th house signifies. Ketu in specific terms is a Naisargika Karaka related to the 12th house, or Ketu is a Naisargika Karaka of the 12th house related to moksha only. Please make a note of it. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I know it's a little confusing how to distinguish between Charakarakas, Sthirikarakas and Naisargika Karakas, and the most important and difficult thing is how to interpret these, because Naisargika Karakas and Sthirikarakas, they have specific significations and they are different, and one can get confused and make a mess out of the whole analysis if one does not practice more and more. And like I said, you know, if you cannot remember these significations, keep a ready reckoner with you when you do an analysis. Take these Karakas, all these three, Chara, Sthir and Naisargika, into consideration. Keep a ready reckoner as to what each planet and what each planet's signification related to that house, and those matters signified by those houses, very important, are concerned. So and then, you know, hopefully you'll be able to do a great analysis. So I'm hoping you enjoyed this video. In the meanwhile, I will recommend subscribe to my channel and check out my website. There is a link below, and I'll see you with an interesting topic very soon. Goodbye.